Hi, I'm Richard, the founder of 10 Adventures, and this is the 10 Adventures podcast. Each week we talk to real people about real adventures as they explore this incredible planet we all live on. Welcome to the 10 Adventures podcast. Today, Karen and I are talking with Mitch Baynes and 10 Adventures team member Jonathan Skinnider, who just completed an epic ski traverse of Vancouver Island. Hi, Johnny and Mitch.
Hello.
Hi there.
I think people are going to wonder, you can ski tour on Vancouver Island. Can you tell us a little bit about what your trip was and what's it like ski touring on Vancouver Island?
Yeah, for sure. Do you want to take this one, Jonathan?
Sure thing. I guess there's two parts to that question. Skiing on the island in general is pretty similar to skiing on the coast. Just everything is a bit lower and a bit warmer and a bit wetter. So it is tough sometimes, to get into the snow or get into the good snow. And there's only a few roads that go really, that are plowed into the good snow line around the ski hills. But if you just take a bit of extra time on a bit of a longer approach, you can definitely get some amazing skiing. This trip was pretty incredible because we went across the island from east to west, and after the first day, we gained this alpine ridge, and for the rest of the 10 days, we stayed high on these big alpine ridges the whole time and just got to enjoy the quality skiing and the great views, and didn't have to deal with the tough approaches or the bushwhacking until the very end.
So then when you did this, where did you enter your trail?
So the traverse roughly followed from Comox to Tofino. We went in through these logging roads behind Comox Lake, and we followed these logging roads up, had to ski up the top bit of the logging road, and then we got into Strathcona Park, and then for the rest of the trip we were in Strathcona Park right till the ocean near Tofino.
Is this an established ski touring route?
I think this exact route, not so much, but especially the first half of the traverse, we kind of connected a lot of at least somewhat common routes, at least in the summertime. They definitely get a few parties a year. For example, we started out on the Comox Range traverse, which is for that section of the ski, we were following tracks actually, which was really shocking to us on the island. You normally don't see other tracks, but then especially the second half of the route, we got into a lot less traveled terrain and a lot more wild. A really wild corner of the park.
Hey, Mitch, can you tell us a bit about the trip length, the distance, the elevation gain? How serious is this undertaking?
Oh, it was definitely pretty full on. It was about 80 kilometers. I'm not sure about the exact elevation gain and loss. Do you remember, Jonathan?
I think it was 8,000 meters to 10,000 meters in that range.
Yeah, so we're doing kind of 800 to 1,200 meters of elevation every day. For me, I'd never done anything of that sort of length before. And, you get trips where I've done backpacking trips that are kind of more in that vein where you're doing a really long multi-day trip backpacking, but ski touring I'd only done a 3 or 4 day trip. Those were mostly with Jonathan though. So I guess the benefit was that Jonathan and I have had a long trip history of doing these sort of things together, and that goes a long ways in, I guess, just making things go smoothly.
How many days total was it? Was it 10 days, I think, or was it less?
Yeah, 10 days. But yeah, to be fair, one of those days was just inside of a tent, not going anywhere.
And so that was my next question. Where were you guys staying? So you guys were winter camping the entire way?
So we had 2 shelters. One was just a cook shelter that was a hubba with a fly on it and not the body of the tent. And then what we mainly slept in was the Black Diamond Mega Mid, which is just basically a pyramid with no body to it really. So you kind of have to sculpt the ground of it out of snow and stuff, and But it's really comfortable once you set it up properly. You just use like a ski pole to hold it up in the middle, so it's very convenient and light. Most of the campsites we had were like actually quite comfortable. Like the day we were caught in the rain, I woke up like totally dry. It was very nice.
Sounds good. So, Jonathan, what made you decide to do this epic ski traverse?
I think it was just a desire to, as Mitch said, we haven't done a long trip or a trip of this length, and it was a desire to do a trip of this length, like just to see what that was like and to be out for that long. Partially because of COVID, and also just because I really love the island. This traverse kind of presented itself, and like so, I was thinking of a different route, and then we met Stefan, and he kind of had this particular route, and he had this in his mind for a while and had a lot of the planning done, and then it just seemed like an amazing route to do with the three of us. So then that's how this came around.
So there were three of you in your group, you and Mitch and Stefan as well. And what kind of backgrounds did the three of you have as far as ski touring? You alluded to multi-day trips, that you two hadn't done trips this long before, but what kind of backgrounds did you have?
Like, we started ski touring together around 5 years ago on the island. Our backgrounds are very much in parallel, and, we've done a lot of ski trips and ski mountaineering and then a bit of climbing together. I will say Mitch has done a lot more climbing than I have, so that's kind of his stronger suit. And then Stefan, he grew up in Switzerland, so you can imagine that he is very mountain savvy, and he has a wealth of experience that was incredibly valuable in the whole trip.
So Mitch, did this trip require a lot of preparation? Did you guys have to do a lot to get ready for it?
Oh, it took so much preparation. We were talking about this like since January. Jonathan and Stefan were really gung-ho about planning everything, but I am really not good at planning stuff. Like my style of planning is very much to kind of like figure stuff out at the last moment or like improvise a lot, which was obviously like not the way to do a 10-day traverse like this. So it was really good to have Jonathan and Stefan there as people that are like more organized in this regard.
So give us an idea of the kind of preparation you had to do.
Well, the food cache is probably like the biggest aspect that we had to plan. So Stefan, he was the guy that had the whole route idea to begin with. Like Jonathan had the idea that he really wanted to exit, like go from Lake Bedwell to the ocean. But Stefan was the one that kind of had the idea to piece together all these ridges and connect this to here and that to there to make a path that you could get all the way to the ocean from there without even actually going down into the valley that Jonathan was kind of looking at, which kind of had its own difficulties and advantages in the end, that we were on the ridge for so long before we descended to the ocean.
So tell us more about the food caches, because what are you talking about for that?
Right, yes. So we did a trip about a month before the actual trip, or like the full traverse, to just leave a bunch of food at Bedwell Lake, which is about the halfway point on the trip. Jonathan and Stefan, like ever the planners, had like the proper material for their bags. They had this very thick sea kayak bags that were, quite impenetrable. I didn't think ahead to get a bag like that. So I was just using like a sleeping bag compression sack that was, like a very soft material. So then when we stashed this stuff, I was like immediately worried because I kind of thought we were going to be burying it underground, but it ended up being like above ground. But like Jonathan and Stefan had been talking about it, and, as the third person, you're kind of like, well, if you guys think so, then I guess it's all right. But then as soon as I got back to town for like the next month, I was just worrying about this food cache that was going to get broken into. And sure enough, when we got there, it was evident that the birds had gone to it, and they got all my good snacks. There was like no chocolate left at all, which was like, what you're praying for on day 5 of a traverse like that. And all I was left with was like a ton of salty nuts, which turned out to be absolutely horrible. By like midday, a lot of the time you're like kind of dehydrated and you're not stopping for like 4 or 5 more hours. So like the last thing you want to eat is these stupid salty nuts. And especially on the last day when we were descending on Tabco, that was like just such a problem. It was awful.
So I'm intrigued by this, Mitch. If a lot of your food for the second half of your trip was broken into by rodents or birds, then what did you eat?
Well, luckily, Stefan and Jonathan had some extra food. Stefan in particular was like just so on point with his food preparation. He had like a Builder bar, or like a Ritter Sport, and like a bunch of salty snacks, espresso beans for like every day. That was just like in a vacuum sealed pack that you could just open up at the beginning of the day. So I stole a lot of Ritter Sports from him, which is great because, you know, I'd never spend like $4.50 on a Ritter Sport normally.
Well, it's better when your friend's paying for it.
Exactly. Oh man, I mooched so many snacks off of him. And I actually had like a good excuse for it too, because my cash got broken into. So in reality, for like a lot of the trip, my food got like a huge upgrade to it.
Worked out well for me as well because I had a bunch of extra snacks that, you know, you get to the food cache, you're about to put, 5 or 7 kilos of weight on your pack again, and I could offload a bit to Mitch because he was low.
Yeah, Jonathan was so eager to like just offload absolutely anything as soon as we got to the lake.
So, Jonathan, did you just give him all of your heavy food and you kept the light stuff?
I just gave him like all my leftover snacks. We had some, dehydrated banana mush, and I don't know. I think I had an extra dinner that I gave him as well.
What did you do for food? Did you dehydrate your own meals? Did you just buy ready-made meals, or was it just Ichiban every night?
Yeah, I dehydrate a lot of the food for Jonathan and I. And Stefan had like all these really good backcountry recipes of making sort of like these granola bars out of dried bananas and a bunch of seeds and chocolate all mixed together and then dehydrated, which became like the banana mush that we had like every morning. But it did have like more of a granola bar texture. When you say banana mush to people, they get like really grossed out and think it sounds kind of nasty, but it tasted so good. You have like a few bites of this stuff and it would just fill you up for hours because it was just so dense. It was like that bread in Lord of the Rings, the Lama's bread or something like that, where you just take like a few bites and you're full. It was great.
So I know traveling here in the Rockies at this time of year, there's lots of sun crusts where you have to use ski crampons. You can have really slushy snow down low, but you can also get days where you have this incredible powder. What did you guys have on your traverse?
We definitely had a good mixture. It was definitely on the warmer side. So I guess like the main concern we had, especially during the heat of the day, when it was very sunny early on, were the loose sweat avalanches. So because of that, we chose to wake up around 4:30 most mornings. We were going right before sunrise while it was still cold and very safe. So that made sure our traveling conditions were pretty safe. But definitely towards midday as we were traveling, it got very slushy and wet. And so we had a few really, really nice corn runs off the peaks if we got there kind of mid-morning. But we also had a few very soupy mashed potatoes, survival skiing with a 50-pound pack kind of ski descents. And a few descents where we took the rope out just so that we could ski cut that loose wet stuff just to make it safer.
So what do you mean when you say you used the rope? Can you explain a bit more about that for people who might not have experience with what you're talking about?
We brought 50 meters of rope and we used it for some mountaineering stuff, but we also used it a number of times just to mitigate avalanche danger. So we'd build an anchor and we'd belay someone as they skied across a slope. And the main avalanche problem we were having were these loose wet slides. That's basically when the top couple inches of snow gets saturated by the heat of the sun and it just becomes a total slurpee basically. We would belay one person as they ski cut across the whole slope from left to right. And basically, if you were going down a narrow enough, like a gully or something just that was abutted by cliffs, you could flush the whole thing out and then ski it with a lot less danger afterwards.
So, Mitch, it sounds like really an epic trip. Other than getting your food broken into, which sounds like that was a pretty tough part, what were some of the other tough things that happened on the trip?
Well, I think we all had sort of different parts that were cruxes for us personally. For me, the hardest day was like that same day when we got to Bedwell Lake. I was super tired from going over the mist horns the day before. We had done this sort of detour to do the mist horns, which was like a bunch of steep snow, and I was the one leading that, so I was kicking steps up the whole way. And I didn't really eat anything this day because we were just on the move and we were worried about the snow conditions degrading over the course of the day. So we didn't take any breaks that day. Then the next day, I was just totally trashed from that. And we had this huge climb to get up Tom Taylor. I was just going so slow because I was like so behind on calories. It was also just like day 5 of the trip. You know, you're just kind of getting a bit fatigued at that point. We got like a kind of a bit behind schedule of where we would be in the day, just kind of based on the pace we thought we'd be going at. I was definitely like the slowest person in our group at that point, for sure. And we ended up getting to the top of the ridge of Tom Taylor, like right as the sun was setting, which was kind of, it was like super beautiful to see all these mountains around and just like this endless expanse of wilderness with like the full moon rising above and this really nice sunset. But you're also on like this really exposed ridge that you really don't want to be on as the sun is going down and it's getting like super cold. I remember like just feeling completely exhausted at this point. Like there was, when we got to the ridge, there was kind of like this thumb of granite that we had to go over to get out to the lower angle ridge on the other side of that, where we wanted to exit by. And Stefan started getting out the rope and like leading his way up these blocks of granite.
Was this in the dark?
This is now the dark, yes. And this is like 10:30 or 11 o'clock at this point. And we had been on the move since like 6 o'clock in the morning or something. Earlier than that, actually. I think we woke up at like 4:30 that day. Jonathan and Stefan like still had some gas in the tank, but I was like just totally wasted. I remember just like untying my knot and then retying it to tie into the rope that Stefan had set up like 3 or 4 times because I was like so tired. I wasn't convinced that I was like tying this knot properly even. And then Jonathan just looks at me and he's like, I really, really don't want to be here. I was like, yeah, I feel that. Do not want to be climbing this blocky like granite ridge right now in the dark. Yeah, that was definitely the hardest part for me. And it was like properly terrifying to just have to do that when you're like so tired already. It was really nice to have Stefan there to just be like the rope gun and be like, hey, we're doing this. Because he's like an experienced mountaineer and he's like just very kind of calm and grounded in those situations. That was definitely the most difficult section for me. And I think Jonathan and Stefan probably had different sections that were harder for them, but that was my own crux.
So what time did you actually get into camp that night then?
It was just like the middle of the night, and we just set up camp by this giant, like wind blowing funnel, like this giant wind funnel. And I just, as soon as I laid my pack down, I was just like, I was not getting up again. I was just like watching Jonathan and Stefan set up the shelter. I was like, I would sleep out here in the snow if you guys weren't setting up that shelter. Like I was done. I was not moving for the rest of the night.
How long did you end up sleeping?
We didn't actually have a huge sleep in that night, but a few days later, I slept for like 15 and a half hours because I was so exhausted the next days too. I think I just ate like a couple spoonfuls of coconut oil just to get some calories that night, and just like immediately went into my sleeping bag to go to bed.
How about you, Jonathan? Is there a different moment that speaks to you as being the toughest one?
I'm not sure if there was a particular moment. I think overall, like, I definitely felt like the least mountaineering, mountaineering-y person on the trip. Like, Stefan is very experienced, and Mitch has a very, very good head for exposure. And I definitely get spooked by that kind of stuff. So I found dealing with that pretty challenging throughout the trip. But on the other hand, I think what was really nice in the group was there was absolutely no qualms about getting the rope out and pitching stuff out, getting belayed. So it was nice how I was very scared about that quite frequently. I was always in the safest position on the rope. I never really had to do anything dangerous, or at least that dangerous. So it was very I was very well supported.
Good. You talked about feeling spooked frequently, and I was just wondering, like, how do you deal with that? Like, you're out on a ridge at 11 p.m. in the snow on a rope. I don't know, I would feel a little spooked. So how do you deal with that when that's happening?
Well, actually, Stefan had some great suggestions for me. He said, like, just focus on your breathing, and you can smile to yourself, or you can just try and take a bit of curiosity with you and think about, oh, what's going to be over the next ridge? What's going to be at the next landing? What's the next pitch going to be like? Personally, I found the curiosity thing to be extra frightening, but I did appreciate the because I don't think I'm not like, oh, what's around the next ridge? It could be great. I kind of probably go to what's around the next ridge. It's going to be vertical rock, and we are going to have to climb this really scary pitch of snow. What I ended up doing a lot was just kind of getting into a rhythm with my boots and my ice axe and stuff, and then just humming a song to that rhythm, and then that would really got me focused just on what was right in front of me.
Hey Jay, so you and I have done some ski touring together, and I know how much you love the descent and you like the non-technical ascents. You fly up. After doing this traverse, do you see doing more of these really technical traverses, or do you think it's kind of changed and you're gonna focus more on the non-technical aspect of ski touring?
I loved just being out there for so long. I loved the skiing, and I think I would prefer doing a traverse that was less technical in the future. But I think if there was the setup we had, where I definitely was not in, for all the mountaineering stuff, I was not, at the rope gun it by any stretch. I think I wouldn't be adverse to doing that, but I think what really captures my imagination right now are the big ice field traverses on the coast, where you're doing a more moderate ice field for most of the traverse, but they're interesting, less committing side trips you can do up mountains where it just seems like you have a lot more options.
What you were saying, though, Jonathan, about just that feeling of being out there for day upon day upon day, like we've been talking to a lot of people on the podcast, and there's something about that a lot of them have commented on, that feeling like every day you get up and you're just focused on, which direction you're going and what you're going to eat and where you're going to sleep, and like that's about it. But it's like day after day. I don't know. There's something about that feeling that's really incredible.
I love that feeling, but I definitely noticed that on the first day, like we didn't drive as high as we thought we would on the logging road to get in, and kind of for the whole morning of the first day, my whole body just felt tense, and I couldn't enjoy the moment, and I was just, like anxious, and I really wasn't having fun. And then it took until like we had, gotten to the top of the logging road and into the park, and sort of started that first climb, halfway up the first climb, that I really settled into the flow, and really settled into the moment, and was able to kind of let go of that. You're thinking about, oh, what's 5 days ahead, what's 7 days ahead, and you could just take that day and maybe the next morning as everything you're planning for, basically.
The island's famous for the bushwhacks, both to get up but also to get out. And so what was the bushwhack, to get into, to get back down to the ocean at the end of this?
Oh, it was absolutely heinous. I've worked in both Alberta wildfire and BC wildfire, so I'm very familiar with bushwhacking, but this was like on a whole nother level. It was so awful. And it was another classic situation where I just had like only these stupid salty nuts in my bag. And we were so dehydrated. So we had been on the move since 1 a.m. this morning to get past Abco and to get down the ridge because, we wanted to hit Abco in the right conditions when the snow was still firm. So by the time we were descending through the forest and onwards to the ocean, we'd been on the move for something like 16 hours or something crazy like that. And you could just see the ocean like right in front of you, right there. And it was just never seemed to get closer. At the end, I think we only made it like 250 meters horizontally in an hour and a half because it was just so dense. Yeah. We had these skis on our back, which just get caught up on everything, of course. And then there's just like a ton of wind blowdown around there. So you're just crawling over logs or squishing under logs constantly. And then at the end, it just seemed like the forest got more and more dense the closer you got to the ocean. And it was just like the forest was just throwing everything at you to stop you from getting to the end. And at the end, I remember just like swimming through the Salal where you're just have like you can't see your feet. Your feet are just on Salal. All your limbs are tangled in the Salal. And you're just kind of like pulling with your arms through this jungle. And I think Jonathan and Stefan kind of made it through with a bit more grace, but I would just like get my limbs caught in the Salal and then just like try to rip them out. And then as you're ripping them out, they kind of like let go unexpectedly. And then you just go forward in a giant heap and fall on your face. I must have done that like 100 times. Don't you think, Jonathan?
Yeah, maybe.
I'm just trying to picture you, the three of you, doing this bushwhack in your ski boots with your skis in your backpack and a big backpack and like going over logs and under logs. And I'm trying to figure out how that even happened.
Yeah. Oh, it was so bad. I can't believe you're not chiming in here, Jonathan, because this was like literally the most suffering part of the trip for me. Well, I guess apart from Tom Taylor, but this is just extended pain for a very long time.
It was also tough because, like, I think in total that day we were on the move from like 1 a.m. till 8 p.m. And for the whole day, we each had like 2 liters of water. And we were always like, oh, yeah, we'll get water there. Oh, we'll get water there. And we can never find like a stream or anything. We kind of got halfway down, like the first half of way going down the ridge was really nice. And then like it was just pleasant old growth with very little underbrush. And then yeah, it just like, I mean, we had a break halfway down in the sun and we were like, man, this is going so well. We're going to be down on the beach in an hour. Like, this is amazing. And then it just like seriously just got progressively worse and worse and worse. And like, just when you thought it couldn't get any worse and you saw the ocean, just around the next corner, like the last 20 meters or whatever were just like, you just couldn't see anything. It was just unbelievable.
Oh, wow. So when you finally got to the ocean then, like you're finally through the last of the Salal and you've got down to the beach, you can almost touch the water. How are you feeling?
Oh, I was like totally depleted. I'd seriously bonked again. And then we got to the shoreline and there's just like bear poop everywhere. So you didn't even want to sleep there. Because you're just like, man, we're definitely going to get eaten by a bear here. And so then we were kind of like humming and hawing, and we ended up crossing this creek and going to a different beach. But then this beach like wasn't high enough to get out of the tide. So you're just kind of like sleeping at the very top of the tide line, just watching it go closer to us all night. It was a strange way to end the trip.
I kind of maybe expected it to be more like and like we're done, and this is the a climax and relief. But it was really none of those things. It just kind of felt like any other day of the Traverse, really. And I think that was maybe one of the things I enjoyed the most of it, was just how every day you were very much just focused on that day, and there weren't so many like massive highs and massive lows. It was just like a very, very, just you were taking that day as it came, and you were very much in the moment. So yeah, coming out to the beach, like there was definitely relief to be out of the bush and to not be doing that anymore, and to get water and to get dinner going and all that stuff, and to have a rest. But like it wasn't like this euphoric, well, we've done it, eureka. I mean, that was nothing like that.
Is there a part of you that's sad or disappointed that it's ended?
Oh yeah, I mean, it's definitely at this point is the it's like a smaller part. I was pretty tired and dirty, and my lips were pretty sunburned. But yeah, like it was just so wonderful every day.
Yeah, I know I felt at the end of a long trip, I sometimes feel a mix of emotions that sometimes like there's this part of you that's exhausted and you're kind of like, oh, wow, like this is going to be nice just to not have to perform for a few days. But there's also a part of you that's kind of disappointed because it means like you're going back to, your usual life away from the trail or the route or the mountains. So yeah, it's a lot of different emotions.
Your journey didn't end, unlike most traverses or most routes where you kind of get down to the water, you get into a town. You guys were still kind of in the middle of nowhere, weren't you? So, like, how did you actually get back to civilization from, some little inlet on the Pacific Ocean?
So we just took a water taxi.
We were picked up by a water taxi, and driven back to Tofino, where we were then picked up by Stefan's partner.
So how did you arrange the water taxi? Because I'm sure they're just not commonly going back and forth to Bear Poop Beach.
It was Stefan's done a couple, or he's done maybe two boat trips in that general area. So he had contacts. He was able to contact them, and then we had the InReach going. So kind of when we knew we were going to make it to the beach that night, we InReach saying, "Can you arrange the water taxi for tomorrow morning?" And then we got the InReach message back that it was coming at 8. So it was all handled by Stefan and his partner. So she was able to phone and arrange it for us, which is nice.
And how long was the boat ride? Like, is this like you're in the boat for 5 minutes, or were you quite far from Tofino where you ended up?
I think it was like an hour. It was a good ride, and it was quite chilly too. Thankfully, it wasn't raining.
So I'm picturing the two or the three of you, and you're in this water taxi. You've spent the night sleeping at the tide line on a beach, just trying to stay out of the water. This water taxi's taken you for an hour away from the beach, and you've landed at the dock in Tofino, and you've got your 80-liter backpacks with your skis on it, and you're walking up the dock in your ski touring boots. And how do you feel when you get into Tofino?
It was so nice to be just to go to a coffee shop mainly. I mean, it was weird to see people again. That part is, I think, the reason a lot of us go on these trips is for the seclusion and sort of the escape from urban society, and just escape from other people in general. So being back in civilization was, that's always jarring. But being back to real food was really nice. I think I spent like $30 at a cafe around there, just getting like so much food. Then as we were just like sitting around, getting like just drinking our coffees, the weirdest thing happened where we were. Like people kept asking us where we'd come from because we had just had our skis in the middle of Tofino, which is like a surf town. And then Stefan, who's like very low key and he kind of underplays everything a lot. I think that just kind of made people more curious because people would ask him and he'd just be like, "Oh yeah, we're just got back from like a week and a half trip." They're like, "A week and a half trip? What the heck?" And then you'd be like, oh yeah, we just came here from Courtney. And then it just kind of makes people even more curious about it. And we had kind of ended up accruing like this group of like 15 people that kept asking us questions about the trip. It was just so kind of surreal just to be like regaling people about this trip after kind of just being in the bush. And also just, no one's really ever cared about anything I've done in my life. And so it's just really weird to just have these people like crowding around, just like being super interested in something you've done.
And didn't I hear that one of those people ended up being a reporter too?
Yeah, the person behind us in line was a reporter, and then they started like interviewing Stefan because he's kind of like the brains of the operation, so he had kind of the best intel on everything. And I guess apparently we're going to be in a newspaper article, possibly. It still seems very strange.
And Jonathan, didn't I hear that even the mayor of Tofino came out to greet you three?
Okay, the mayor wasn't there. I won't exaggerate the story that much.
He was, Mitch. He came and chatted with us very briefly, and then he went along. And then someone else was like, "How's the mayor doing today?" And he said, "Good." And then I looked him up, and boom, that was the mayor.
Wait, are you being serious right now? I honestly had no idea about this.
Well, this is something for your diary then, Mitch.
Well, Mitch and Jonathan, this was really great. It sounds like you had an incredible trip. You expanded your horizons in terms of what you can accomplish physically and mentally on these trips. And I know for myself, I felt like I was traveling along with you. So thanks for taking the time to share this incredible journey across Vancouver Island with us.
Yeah, thanks, you guys.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, thanks for having us on the show.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of the 10 Adventures podcast. If you liked it, why not give us a review? Better yet, subscribe and get inspired again and again. Also, if you want to find your own adventures, why not check out 10adventures.com, where you can use our free resources to plan your own trip or book a tour in over 60 countries and make your own epic memories on your next adventure.